So firstly, culture isn't one and done.
Organisations that are focusing on structure, systems and processes in place are never going to solely work when there is not a culture that is going to ignite them and bring it out. Welcome back to the Start Inspiring series. We're now calling our velocity effect, which we're going to be talking to you about today. My name's Annie, the growth partner, and today I'm talking to Kelly Wakeman, founder. Our work has enabled us to work across so many cultural transformations in organisations. We know this has meant our exposure has been higher than anyone else's in terms of our visibility of what we are seeing every single day. We know there needs to be a credible and measurable mechanism in place for this to work properly. It is so fantastic to be able to talk about it today because this is actually where our velocity effect started.
So our values are inspire, challenge and grow. And we know for people and performance to thrive in businesses, you need all three. So if you've got inspiration, you've got energy, you've got commitment. Without it, you end up with apathy. With challenge, you end up with accountability and people taking personal pride and responsibility for jobs to get done. Without that, you end up with comfort zone. So that's when you really ignite high performance in individuals, teams and organisations.
So in practice, how does the velocity impact work at Start Inspiring?
It's really simple in its methodology. So out of all the work that we've done across all of the organisations that we've done it in, we now recognise that you need clarity times energy, and that's how you get velocity. And so when we talk about velocity, that's about everybody in the organisation working at pace in the same direction. So we'll go into an organisation and we'll diagnose, have they got clarity? Do people know what's expected of them? Is it filtered all the way through the organisation? Do they know what good performance looks like? And then have they got energy? So are there people engaged? Are they really excited about the purpose of the organisation? Do they know how they can make a difference? And making sure that there is the absence of any drag or friction in the system that decreases momentum. And so that clarity times energy would give you your velocity score.
Organisations that are focusing on structure, systems and processes in place are never going to solely work when there is not a culture that is going to ignite them and bring it out. Interesting research from the Harvard Business School I read recently was talking about that, which is saying, look, if you're only focusing on a process and a system and you're not bringing it down to the foundations of the culture, really it's the difference between success and failure in your business. Financially, this ultimately can make or break an organisation, right?
Absolutely. And I love the word culture actually, because that's what grows. So if we think about it like that, and it is an ecosystem. If you have one part working, but you haven't really thought about how your organisation is behaving, living, breathing, doing its work on a daily basis, you are really missing an opportunity for high performance.
We see this all the time in organisations. Best processes in place, best people in place sometimes, best systems in place, but not the underpinning culture that is actually ignited through everybody in that organisation. So in order for this to work, and we've talked about this a lot, and what's fantastic about the Start Inspiring velocity effect is that we are igniting the ability to embed a diagnostic into your organisation that is going to enable you to have the answers to things that have been blind spots going forward. Tell me about how those diagnostics work when we're talking about the velocity effect in an organisation.
So firstly, culture isn't one and done. And I think that's really important because actually those examples that you're describing where they've got the systems, they've got great people, but somehow they're not all working together. Culture is your glue. and you have to invest and reinvest in it. So that's why we're saying this not a one-off survey. This is an organizational diagnostic, and it's almost like any Fitbit or anything else works on your body. This works in your organization and tells you the health metrics of whether you are healthy and whether you are performing to your maximum potential.
So if we're looking at this in, I guess, sort of 3 or 4 diagnostic stages, if we were giving headlines to our listeners today, and by the way, there will be a QR code that you can scan if you're interested in finding out more about what that starting point to gain the velocity effect in diagnostics in your organisation looks like. If there were 4 headlines then in how you would begin describing what those different states could look like from this good end to poor end, what would those be?
If I start with the first higher level diagnostic that we complete in an organisation, that looks at the clarity, looks at the energy. It's quite a simplistic model, but then puts your organisation into a performance zone. So there are 4 performance zones. The first one is velocity zone. So I have high levels of clarity, high levels of energy, and I am really comfortable that my organisation is working at speed, all in the right direction. And actually we see a number of organisations doing that, so we can learn from the best as well. Then we've got high levels of clarity but low levels of energy. That's where we really see stagnation and a huge opportunity for organisations, because they know where they want to go. They're just not bringing their organisation with them. So how do we use the right levers to increase energy and commitment to the strategy, the vision, and the organisational purpose? Third one is the chaos zone. So this is where in actual fact we've got lots of energy, but everybody's working in different directions. None of it is really delivering the high levels of performance. And you know, you've seen those organisations where they've got 20 priorities. Everyone's putting a lot of effort in, but none of them are actually getting executed at speed.
And the fourth part?
Well, that's the one none of us really want to find ourselves in. So that's the danger zone. So that's where there's lack of clarity. So people do not know what's expected of them. There is not a clear direction, and lack of energy, which is probably caused by that, which means they don't really want to come to work. They're not really committed. You're not getting their discretionary effort. And if anything, you're likely to have apathy.
So to an organisation that's listening today, and what's really nice is that you've clearly defined those 4 areas, and you know, whether you're listening on Spotify or watching or listening in the car, for me, if you feel like you need help, how could Start Inspiring, what would be the starting point?
So we've got a brilliant velocity survey. Essentially there's 24 questions, 12 on clarity. So has your organisation got the right direction, sense of clarity for people to be able to do a great job? And 12 questions on energy. So are they engaged? Are they inspired? And is there anything in the system that's dragging or causing friction for them? And that will give you your velocity score and your velocity zone.
And research suggests that you're 20% more likely to get results if you've got clarity to start with. So doing that survey is so powerful. And oh, by the way, it's free, right?
Yeah, it's free.
Yep.
It's there to help our community, really just to get started.
So one thing to take from today then for our listeners would be,
I think if you're piqued by the velocity diagnostic and you get the score and you want to understand a little bit more, we can come in and do a deeper dive, really looking at these 8 pillars of high performing organisations. So we look at vision, we look at engagement, leadership. Is your organisation set up for success? What levels of capability have you got? What's the infrastructure around your system? Are you managing talent really well? And are you experiencing year-on-year growth? And that's where the velocity framework really ultimately comes from.